Hello, everyone. Welcome on in to another Learn with the Nerds. My name is Allison Gonzalez. I'm going to be your nerd for the day, and I am joined with another one of our trainers here at Pragmatic Works, Yasmin Brooks. She's going to be in the chat answering all of your questions as we go through the day today. So we're going to be here. We got a nice hour and a half. I could talk about Excel for way longer than that, but we get an hour and a half together. So anytime we're going through something, you got some questions, go ahead, put those in the chat. This meeting is going to be taking care of those. We also have a new special session that is going to be happening because we always get so many good questions in the chat during these that we can't answer all the time. So we are going to be going through next week, I believe, and we are going to have another live where we just answer questions. So we're going to go through those chat questions that we didn't really get to answer, maybe we're a little too complex for like a simple answer that we can give you in the chat. So we're going to pull some of those and answer those in our session. All right. So let's go ahead now and get into it. So my name is Allison. I am a Microsoft certified trainer. I normally live here in the Excel, Power BI world. Love training on those topics. I actually have over a decade of experience managing and training for tech companies. My background is actually in art, if you can believe it. So I actually started out with a fine art degree, taught myself different coding languages, moved into web design, moved into training, and now we're here. So we're going to have a lot of fun talking about data, and then we're also going to round things out by talking about how we can show off our data at the end of our session today. So I've got a 5-year-old and a 5-month, now actually 6-month-old at home. So those parents know that life over there, it is lots going on all of the time, but what's nice with Excel is we can keep nice order, we can keep structure, even though there's chaos going around everywhere else. So we're going to be getting into how we can easily structure things, work in Excel. It's going to be a lot of fun today. So I love to connect with you all over on LinkedIn. It's just my full name, which is right there on the screen for you. I normally am sharing things related to Power BI and, of course, all across the Power platform, just like we do here on our YouTube channel. So hopefully I will connect and see you over there as well. All right. So this is what we're covering today. We are going to start off with some basics because so many times you get thrown into programs and you're just expected to know things. And so everyone puts like Excel expert on their resume when they're getting hired for jobs. And then when you actually get to need to use it, you're constantly Googling, constantly looking up YouTube videos, trying to figure out what you need to know. So there could be some little holes here and there in what you actually know. So we're going to be starting off with some good basics to make sure that we have those fundamentals. We're going to get into formula usage. So if you're just kind of one of those this cell plus this cell, and that's really the extent of it, and you're a little bit scared to use some of those formulas, we're going to break it down, show you how easy it is to use all of these formulas. There's really just a set structure, and you just know how to follow that, and we're going to cover that for you. Then we're going to get into my favorite aspect of Excel, really the hidden gem, you could call it, and that is Power Query. So you may have heard of Power Query. Let me know in the chat if you have used Power Query before, or if you've heard of it, but you weren't really sure what it was, or you opened it and were immediately like, no, I don't know what's going on here. Let's get out of here. But we're going to break it down because it is so easy, and it's honestly my favorite thing to use in Excel. And then we're rounding our session off with dashboard design. So we're going to be taking some data and making a nice little dashboard with that at the end of our time together. So we have a lot to cover and a little bit of time, so let's get into it. So first off, there's class files. If you want to follow along with me, go into the chat and grab those. It's a zipped file. You'll need to unzip that to be able to use that. There's a PDF of the slides I'm going over. There is a starting file that we're going to work on, and also a completed version of that. So if you just want to look at that, that's okay too. There is also a nice handy little keyboard shortcut, because keyboard shortcuts are going to be your life when you're in Excel. They make things so much faster, and there's a million. Not really a million, but there are a few hundred of them. So I made a cheat sheet with some common ones on there. That way you can print that out, stick that up on your wall, and have that close by to reference. So let's get started. First thing that I want to talk about is cell referencing. And cell referencing is just essentially in Excel saying, hey, I want you to get the data from over there. The data that's in that cell over there, I want you to get it, put it in this cell right here instead. So there's two different ways that you are able to reference things. There is what is called relative referencing and absolute referencing. Now, essentially, you're just locking things down, or you're going free and just letting things move around. So let's talk about that. So when we are referencing things, we have this structure at the top of our Excel files. We have our columns and we have our rows. So the columns are normally named with letters, and then the rows are with numbers. So if we're looking at that very first cell, the top left corner in Excel, what is that called? That would be your A1 cell. Now, if you just are saying, hey, go grab the data from there, and then you're trying to move it down a row, pull it around, that is going to change. Excel is going to update. It's trying to try to move with you. But sometimes you don't want that to happen. So that is where we start trying to lock things down, where it's saying, hey, even though I want you to look at this spot right here, this one cell, for all of these other cells over here, I don't want you to move with it. So then we can lock that cell down so that way, no matter where we're dragging, pulling, copying, and pasting our reference, it is always going to go to that one spot, no matter where we put it. So we have relative and we have absolute, and then we also have mixed, where we can have either just the row locked down and we can hop around to our columns, or we can lock down the column but not the row, so you could be able to pull it down. We've got lots of power, and it's all about just knowing what we can do and how to do that. So when we're looking at these, relative is where it's not locked down. Relative is where if I copy the content of my A1 cell and I have that in another cell, when I try to copy and paste that somewhere else, or, pull that down for a whole entire column, well, then it's going to update that. And so instead of it being A1, it would be A2, A3, A4. So anytime we want to block a column or a row down, that's when we're getting into our absolutes with those dollar signs in there, or a mixed that we can see. So it can be really intimidating when you're starting, or you're just at any time in Excel and you see those dollar signs pop up. When I was newer to my Excel journey, I would see that immediately freeze and be like, well, I'm not touching this. I don't know what's going on. I don't know why they're there or how to change that. But it's really simple, and understanding just the process of, hey, do I want this to stay and freeze in place? Do I want it to move around? Just understanding our process there is really demystifying things for us, right? When we're more comfortable, when we're not scared to use it, that just makes our experience easier. These tools are meant to work with us. And so that's what we're going to be going over. Next up, what I want to talk about, I mentioned how we have our columns with letters and we have our rows with numbers. Well, that wasn't always the case. Back in the day, it was actually numbers for both, which honestly I think is a tad confusing. So I personally am glad that they switched over to the letters for the columns. But we can see over here, we have this R1C1, and this is the old way. This is actually how Excel still thinks about things on the back end. So even though we are seeing the A, the B in the front, that R1C1 mode is how they actually still think in the background. And so it's kind of important to understand when we're copying and pasting and moving things over, how that is working in the background for us. So we are able to see, hey, I'm taking this cell and I want to move this cell somewhere else. Well, with that R1C mode where we have the row 1, the column 1, instead of having our letters there, this is how that process would go. So if we want to move that cell, 1 to the right, well, then we'd have row column 1. if we want to move that cell one column to the left, it would be RC minus 1 because we're going minus 1 for the column. Then if we want to go rows, we're trying to go up and down. Well, if we're trying to go up, that's a negative row. And then if we're trying to go down, that is a positive. So this is how actually Excel is moving things around in the background. So if you ever get your Excel stuck in that mode, sometimes I'll open a certain file and if the person editing it previously had it in that mode, a lot of times I'll open it that way. And so you'll see those ones. You can always go into your settings to change it. But honestly, if you understand how it works, it's not too stressful to work in that mode. So we can see, moving from that A1, which is our topmost left cell, to our very bottom cell. So XFD is the very furthest column. That's how far your columns go over in Excel. And then our row max, of course, is 1,048,576. So that very, very last cell is our bottom one. So when we're thinking about those references, thinking about moving things over, we are increasing as you copy to the right and down, and then decreasing or kind of minimizing as we go to the left. So we are going to be hopping in to Excel. Make sure you get that starting file from your class files if you would like to follow along. If you need a second, you can always pause this and then just hit play and resume. You would be a few minutes behind us, but that is totally okay. Before you do that though, you got a nice little diagram, and don't forget you also have a copy of this in your slides. We can see a little bit more clearly with that A1 mode versus the R1C1 mode right here in our formula bar, where we could see, hey, how do I add together this and this? What does this look like in that formula? Well, we are seeing it's going to be that B2, because we got our B right here. There's our markers plus the C2. But in our R1, C1 mode, we can see, hey, we're moving from this is our initial cell. We're going to reference this cell right here and then this cell right here. So if you're opening a file and it's in this mode and you're like, this looks even more strange than normal, it's just a little breakdown. It's really simple. We're starting what cell are we on, and then where is the other content coming from in relation to where I am now. So I've got some keyboard shortcuts for you all. I have a whole printout for you. You can, of course, just screenshot this page. It's also in the slides for you as well. But I have a whole little nice handy dandy shortcut for you. It's a nice little PDF in those class slides. Looks just like this. So you can see some of the most common ones, what they do, and a little bit of a note on keyboard shortcuts. Sometimes it's not going to be just mashing all of those keys down at the same time. Anytime that you see a comma showing up, that means that you put some together and then some after the other. So there's a little bit different structure because, again, there's so many shortcuts, they had to come up with a bunch of combos to get all of these to work. So if you see a comma in the structure of any of these, I don't think I have any in this one. Those are a little bit more of the complicated ones where you're going to need to do this, then that structure. But these are some of the basic ones. Of course, we've got our normal, Control C for copy, Control plus is bold, Control I is italic. Some of those are universal across programs that you're going through. We've got some good workbook ones like Control plus N to open a new workbook. Control plus S automatically saves it wherever you're at. Control T opens a table. There's so many that we can get into, but I tried to get some of the basic ones in here for you to have an easy handout. So that is in the class files. Again, grab those if you need it. So let's go ahead now. We are going to jump into Excel. So let's go ahead now. I have the starting file open. There's a starting file and a completed file in those class files. So if you're like, you know what, I'd rather just watch, or I don't really have the space to follow along, you can always have that completed file open, see what gets accomplished, and then you can try to do that practice on your own, rewatch this. It is, of course, going to be saved here on our Pragmatic Works channel. So if you're not subscribed, make sure you do subscribe so you can easily find this again if you want to rewatch any of these sections. So let's get into it. So we have a nice little section of some data here. We've got some coffee in here. I hope you all have your coffee with you too to keep you nice and energized as we go through today. So I have a few products here, a bag of coffee beans, a mug, a little coffee bean grinder, and an espresso machine. I've got the cost of each of those items. If only I could get a really good espresso machine for $100, that would be super handy. And we can see the quantity purchased for each of those items. So I just want to find out, hey, how much does this cost? What is my total for each of those items? So what we're going to do is just a simple this cell times this cell. I want to say, hey, this item's $10. I want 5 of them. So 5 times 10, I should want to see $50 showing up right here. So it is so simple to do this. When you're writing any kind of calculation, any kind of formula in Excel, you always start off with the equal sign. Because if I was saying, hey, I want to multiply this cell plus this cell, well, as soon as I click off of the cell where I want that information to go, it's going to highlight another one. Putting that equal sign in clues in Excel to saying, hey, I want you to now go reference other data from some other place. So we always want to start off with that equal sign, and that is going to now allow us to just go click over to whatever we want. Now I could see, hey, this is the cell right here. This is C3. So it's in my C column, my 3 row. So this would be C3. So I could just type C3 right here, but even easier, I can just go click to select it. Because I put that equal sign in, I stay in the cell that I need to be in, and I'm just referencing that other cell, and it's pulling that content over now for my new cell. So it's great. We've got our first part. We've got our cost down. Now I just need to figure out, all right, I know how much it costs. Now I just want to see how many I got. So we are going to use a nice little asterisk to multiply this. And then we are going to go ahead and click on what we want to multiply it by, which is the quantity. So I can see I'm referencing C3 and I'm referencing D3. Now all you have to do is hit enter and we can see, ta-da, we got $50 there. Now a handy dandy little way, so you don't have to rewrite this every time. You also don't have to copy and paste. I don't have to hit Control C, Control V to copy and paste this down. You can just grab right in the bottom right corner and just drag that down. Fills out your whole entire table. Now we can also see, because we didn't lock it down, we didn't have any of those dollar signs in here, that this is just referencing exactly where it is. And then as soon as I drag it down a row, it has moved it down and it's now pulling from this row right here. So if I wanted to change that, I could lock it down, but if I don't want to, so I'm happy pulling it over. Now, if I try to pull a cell over this way, well, it's not going to work, right? It's not going to work because now it is pulling data from a spot that doesn't matter. It's saying, hey, multiply D and E together. And then as we go over, it'll be like plus E and F. So if we were trying to go horizontal or a different direction, we would definitely need to change that and put those asterisks in. Now, a super easy way to do that is with your F4 key on your keyboard. So all you have to do is in your formula bar, you can hit the F4 key. And as soon as you do that, you can see it is going to put in those little dollar signs for you, lock everything down. If you keep hitting your F4 key, it's going to cycle through all of your options. So I can see, all right, my column can move, but my row is locked in place. Or now the vice versa, my column is locked and my row can move around. Hit it again and you're back to normal. So F4 helps you easily decide, hey, this needs to be locked in place, this one doesn't, and you can move around like that. All right, let's move in. We got our basics in. Let's move into a little bit more complicated. Now I'm going to hit cancel to get out of this cell because I just kind of moved some things around, make sure that's working. Anytime if you're in a cell, you're looking at your formula and then you click to somewhere else, notice that sometimes you can start messing things up. So you want to make sure before you get out of your cell, you hit that X. You can also hit undo and that should help fix anything you may have inadvertently messed up. All right, next thing up, let's go in and we are going to look at this time card one. So we got another example here where I have a rate. People are getting paid $50 an hour, and I can see the amount of hours that they have worked. So what do I want? I want to multiply the hours by the rate. So for the first one, pretty simple, right? Exactly how we did it last time. We're going to start off with that equal sign in our pay column. We are then going to select our cell. So we will have C3 is our first one. That's our Monday hours. We're going to put in that asterisk to multiply it. And then I'm going to go ahead and select this pay rate cell, which is G2. So C3, G2, fantastic. We're going to hit our enter. Got our $600. Pretty good day on Monday. Now, look what happens though when I move that down. It is not working. And I talked about that in the last cell. Why is it not working? Because now look what it is pulling. C4, fantastic. But now it's looking at G3. Next one down, it would be at C7 and then G4. So as it's going down, we need to lock down just this one. I don't need anything in that pay column changing. That's fine. I just want to make sure that G2 stays locked in place. So let's go ahead. I'm going to click back on that $600, my first one, because I want to make sure all of these are the same. And then I'm just going to highlight G2 up in my formula bar. And as that's highlighted, I'm going to hit my F4 key, lock this down so that way that G2 gets locked in place. Once I do that, you can hit enter, hit the check mark to get out of that cell. And then let's just drag that back down again to make sure we are updating all of our others. Now we can see we get the right amount of days or the right amount of pay for each of these days because it is not accurately going over and getting this in place. So super simple. Hopefully this for a lot of you is a review. Maybe some of you were a little bit timid in going into Excel or just doing something, not understanding why it worked or elements of that. Hopefully you're just getting a little bit more confident as you go through. Now, next thing that we are going to talk about, we're going to dive in. So we did some easy ones, but we're going to dive in now and just immediately jump into a little bit more complicated formulas. So let me show you the ones we are going to be looking at next. So make sure that pops up. There we go. We are going to be looking at sum, average, along with XLOOKUP. We're going to end with a handy dandy one. So when we are writing, we started all of our formulas so far in the actual cell. And I personally don't like that. I like to write all of my formulas and functions in that formula bar. Now, little tip. A lot of times when you're hearing the terms formula, function, some people will use those interchangeably, but they actually do mean two separate things. Functions are the predefined ones that are set. They have a whole calculation in place for them. Formulas are ones where you're like, I want this plus this, and we'll do some of this divided by this. You're making it up as you go. You're adding your own flavor to it. You're combining different functions. So formulas, those are more the ones that you are creating. Functions are the predetermined ones. So in your formula bar, this is where you can write your functions. It could just be the sum. It could just be the average that you go through. Or it could be a really complicated one that you are adding in. Now, when you're getting started writing your formulas and your functions, you start thinking, this seems really complicated. I don't know how to get into this. It's like its own language, right? Well, there's a lot of helper elements built into Excel to kind of take a lot of that stress away. So when you are looking in here, you are able to easily, right at the left side of that formula bar, there's this FX button. If you click on this FX button, it's going to pop up this handy little helper window. In this one, you are able to select exactly what function you need. If you don't know what function, because sometimes you're like, I just want to add stuff up. Well, add is not a function, or multiply things up rather. That's not necessarily a function, but the sum where you want to say, I want all of this, added in together is. So if you're not sure what function you need or what it is named, you can go into this function helper window. You can go into this little category section right here, open that up, and it breaks it down into all of the ones like mathematical, statistical, date, time, all the different elements of different or categories that you want to see are in there, and you can easily go through, see the specific ones you want, pick the one you want. Then you'll see a little breakdown for it, which we can see a preview here, where it's just showing, hey, you need this, plus you need this, plus you need this. Great. So we're breaking it down, we're taking it in small pieces, and then you can go tackle one element at a time. So you're like, all right, I need a range of dates. I'm going to go over here. I need this element. Well, that's right here. So you can easily put those pieces together. Functions are separated by commas. So as soon as you grab one element, one range, one cell for the next thing, put the comma, and it's going to push you over to put that next section in. So getting used to writing functions in that formula window, it's really easy. It does take a little bit of practice, but we're going to kind of demystify that, all right? Another spot you can always check out is the actual formula ribbon that you have there. So it's like the fourth one over from home, and you can see all the different ones like the financial, logical, date, time, etc. And that has the list of them there. So some people like to use the formula ribbon, some people like to use the window. I want to show you both so that way you know you got some options. Alrighty, so we are now going to dive right on in. There are, again, hundreds and hundreds of these, but we want to give you a little bit of a taste of some of them. Hopefully get used to writing in the formula bar and feeling confident to tackle some of those more complicated ones. All right, so hop on over in your starting file worksheet, and we have this nice little sum and average tab. So over here in our sum and average tab, we've got some nice plant store data. So if you're a plant person like me, so we have a plant name column, we have the type, we have the height, we got watering frequency. That's a really helpful info. Better than that, though, we've got our cost and our quantity. So I already pre-built our total column, which is showing, hey, if we bought 5 roses, that's $12.99. These are some really good plant prices, y'all. I hope this is a real plant store. So what do I want to find out first? Well, first thing is first, I want to find out how much did all of these plants cost. So I want to find the total. So if I'm buying all of these plants, how much is the total of my total column? So I can see I have this total plant cost column cell selected right here. But unlike last time where we wrote in the cell, I don't want to write in the cell. I want to write up here in my formula bar, because that's going to give you so much more space. Instead of getting cut off by your cell and having other text and being hard to see, just like your legibility is not great, we want to write it up in our formula bar. So as long as you have the right cell selected, it's going to put whatever you write in there. It's just giving you more space. So I'm a diehard use your formula bar person. And if you don't get anything else out of this, get that. You know, you definitely will save yourself some work if you do it in here. Alrighty, so let's go ahead now, and we are going to make sure we have that K3 cell selected. I can see it's kind of highlighted up there. Then we are going to write in our formula bar, and we are going to use sum. So just like we did on our last examples, we're going to still start with that equal sign. And now, though, different from our equal sign, we want to use the sum function. So I can just type out the word sum, but I also want to pull up this little function helper window so you can see what that does. So if you go ahead and click on that, I can see I can sort from recently used. I can have all of them in alphabetical order, and you can see all of the hundreds and hundreds of ones that are in here. Really hard to find what you need, right? Especially if you don't know what you're looking for. So that's why it's broken down. We can see financial specific ones or text specific ones if you needed to, you know, get the mid from a certain section or trim off your white space. Those are all in that text section. So I'm going to go with sum, and with that, you are able to see the different structures. So if you select it, it is going to show you the next step in that helper argument. It's going to show, hey, we need to have this section, then we have that, and it breaks down all of the things. The good thing about using this is you can see a preview of what your answer is going to be before you ever hit OK. So if you're getting errors, you're not getting the right answer, you can keep working in here to generate the right answer before you ever hit OK. So that way, I know it can be intense sometimes when you start seeing errors and just nulls and just not the right answer in your cell. It's nice to work in here. So that way you can kind of keep things clean as you're going. So for us, what do we want? We just want this entire contents of our H column. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to select what's called a range. A range is just a section of this cell to this cell. And I'm going to click and pull down to highlight H3 all the way down through H12. And I can see that what I've selected right here is reflected in my bar up here in that function argument. So I can also see, here's that total. So I can see $600 for all of those plants. I think that is a really good deal. So that's accurate. So I'm going to hit OK. And there we can see we've got that right amount going in there. Next up, I want to know, I'm getting curious now about this data. I want to see what is the average cost for one plant. Just like the average of all of these. Obviously, we've got a variety, but what's our average plant cost going for? So just like we do with the sum, we can do that with average. Now this time, I'm going to write this just in the formula bar. We're not going to pull up our helper window, so you can see also how easy this goes. So we're going to start off with our equal sign. Again, you want to make sure that you have that K5 cell selected. Anything we put in the formula bar is going to be in that. We're just getting more space. So with our equal sign in, now we can just type in the name of the function that we want to use. So I'm just going to start typing in average, and I can see we've got a bunch of different average options here. The cool thing is that every one that you hover over, and you can navigate through these with the arrows on your keyboard, you can see it gives you a little description. So I can see what's different between each of those average functions. I want to select the first one, so you can hit tab to select it. So the tab key on your keyboard. Again, Excel will make you a keyboard person once you got all those shortcuts down, and we will have that pop up. Now I can also, I have another little helper window still here, just like we had in our function window, where it's showing, hey, you need a number to average. We can also have a range in here. So what do I want to average? I want to average my cost quantity, that original cost quantity, because I want to see what is the average original cost for one plant. So again, with the range, I'm just going to select the first cell and pull down so I have that highlighted. I could also just manually type in F3 colon F12. That is also totally okay. If you don't want to select the whole thing, you could just manually type that in if you know it. All right, we're going to close that off with a parentheses because we started with one. We want to close with one, and we can hit enter or that little green check mark. We can see $10. It's the average cost of one plant, which in this economy, I think is a pretty good deal. Final thing we want to find out on here is the count of our plants. So how many plants do we have or have we purchased or planning to purchase here? So that's going to be my quantity column. I want to show you something. We're going to start again. I have that cell selected. I'm going to start with my equal sign. Count is a function in Excel. But if I tell it to, hey, we want to count the quantity cells, what is going to be returned for me? It is not going to be the quantity of plants that we have purchased. Instead, and I just clicked off of there. Come on, we want our quantity selected. There we go. We are getting the count of the cells. So you have to think through what you're looking for and essentially what you need. So yes, I want a count of that, but really what I'm looking for here is the sum. I need to change this so I'm getting the sum of the contents of the cells, not the count of the cells themselves. So this is super easy. I don't even have to delete this. I can just double click on count and just write in the word sum and then select that. Boom. Super easy peasy, as my 5-year-old says, to edit this. Now I can see 72. That is that accurate plant count that we have. Alrighty. We're slowly ramping up, and now we've kind of just like dove off the cliff here. We're ending our function section with XLOOKUP. Now, you may have heard of VLOOKUP, and VLOOKUP has been around for years. XLOOKUP is like the newer, cooler cousin. It's also a little bit easier to use, more helpful, and just better all around. So with XLOOKUP, the way that it went is it was in like an L motion. So you would go down a column, find what you need, and then it would go across that row till it hit the whatever else your other criteria was. With XLOOKUP, it gives you a little bit more flexibility. So it's not just moving in the kind of X setup or in the kind of L setup. You have a lot more free range. So a lot of people, they would end up using combinations of match with that, and it was just a little bit more work. So Microsoft always developing, always changing things. Excel itself, even though it's been around for decades, is still getting updates, still getting new things added to it. XLOOKUP was a really handy function that got added in a few years ago that really just allows now for horizontal and vertical searches, looking up values in rows and columns. Alrighty, so let's go ahead now. I have in here a search ID. So this is just, in this one, you can change it to any employee ID that you want. I just have that first one in there. But if you want to look up Alice, you can put in and see, hey, how much does she make? So this would be handy. Ideally, you're probably looking at more than 4 employees, because if you got 4 employees, you can just eyeball that right there. But let's say you have 400 or 4,000. You have their ID, you can easily plug their ID in and look up that information that you need. So what are we going to do? We're going to select our employee salary cell, that little blank space I have, which is G4. And we're going to, of course, move up to that formula bar. So we're going to start off with an equal sign, and then we're going to pull in the XLOOKUP formula. So we're going to pull in XLOOKUP. And as I start typing, it comes up immediately. And we can see XLOOKUP searches a range or an array for a match and returns the corresponding item. All right, so hit tab to select that. And now we can see the items that we can put in. So we need a lookup value, a lookup array, a return array. Anything in brackets is not necessary, but you can add it in if you would like it. Like, hey, if that's not found, what do we want to see instead? It's not necessary, but you could put it in so you're not showing up with a blank and then wondering, well, did I mess something up? Is it just wrong? You can get a little bit more clarity with that way. So first up with our XLOOKUP is our lookup value, and the lookup value is our employee ID. So we want to click on our G3 cell to say, hey, look up whatever is in this cell. That way we can easily change that around. We don't ever want to hard code into our functions because that makes them really difficult to change. So for longevity, code it to the cell, and then you can change the contents in the cell. So we're going to say, hey, look up whatever's in G3. Right now, that's our employee ID 101. We're going to put a comma in that's going to bump us to our next section, which is going to be the lookup array, which is going to be where are the employee IDs in this table. So the employee IDs in this table are B3 through B6. So I can just highlight through. You can, of course, type it in as well, but I'm going to highlight through B3 to B6. That is my list of employees. This could also, you could lock this down. You put those dollar signs there if you wanted to, because that column is not ever changing. So if you didn't want to, you could do that here. Put in a comma, move to the second section, and that is your return array. And that is going to be the salaries. So we're saying, hey, go to whatever the contents of G3 is, which is 101. Find G1 in that B3 column, B3 to B6. Once you find it, then go find me their salary. That's what we're telling it to do. So we are going to tell it the range now for the return array. So anytime you see that array, they're looking for just more than one cell technically. So D3 through D6 is our return array. Now, I could close this off right here, but I'm going to add something else. I'm going to add an if not found, just for a little bit more clarity. Say if I put in employee ID, I type it wrong and they can't find anything. I'm going to say employee not found. So in quotes, because we're putting a string of text, we're going to put employee not found. Sure, capitalizations are in place there. Let's go edit this. Come on, there we go. And then we can go ahead and we can also put in our exact match for the lookup, which is our match mode. And for that, I'm going to say I want to see an exact match. So I don't want like the next smaller one or larger or just kind of random. I only want to find the exact match. So we want to have that 0 for our exact match in here. And we're going to close that whole thing off with a parenthesis, hit our enter button or that green check mark, and boom, we can see for John Doe search employee ID 101, he's making 50 grand. So if we change this, and let's say I want to look up Alice now, I just changed my search ID. Well, it is now going to update. That's all you got to do. I don't have to touch the formula again. Once I wrote it, it's good. All I have to do is edit my number and it is going to adjust and work. And so I can see super easily what's going on. And let's say I put in a number. Let's say I just do this one. And I know I don't have any 202s. So now it's going to tell me employee not found. So that way I'm not finding an error or a line, something else. I can see, oh, I entered that ID incorrectly. So that's all we're going to talk about with functions. It is just a little taste of them, right? But hopefully enough that you feel confident diving in, exploring, using these if this was something that kind of held you back in Excel before. So using these references, if those dollar signs confused you before, hopefully you're confident to, hit that F4 key. Lock some things in place. So I could talk about this for days, and we have such a limited time, and I've already got to rein it in as we're going on this. But if you want to join me talk more Excel, we actually have an Excel Bootcamp. We're going to be doing that in 2 weeks from now. I think it is. I think it's almost like a week and a half. It's coming up really soon. We have a few more spots available for that, but we get 4 whole days, 9 to 5, talking about Excel, going deeper through all the things we're like mentioning today, and so much more. Like we're going to talk macros. We're going to get into a lot. It's going to be a ton of fun. So if you are like, I just want more, give me more, well, come on over, join me for the Excel Bootcamp. It is going to be a lot of fun. Get pretty much a whole week of Excel, and it is just gonna be a blast and hopefully really, really informative no matter what Excel level you are on. We normally keep our boot camps to 10 to 12 people. We try to keep those class sizes really short. Right now we're in thousands of people in this, and it can be so hard. I see the chat on the side of it. And so many people are putting in great questions, answering things, and it can be a lot. So having those really small class sizes in our boot camps is great because you can get immediate one-on-one answers. You bring something up, we'll talk about it, demo it out, and we can all share and give our feedback on it. So they're really awesome. So I would love if you all join me over there if you really want to dive in, just level up those Excel skills. Alrighty, so we are going to now dive into what is my favorite part of Excel. And I would also say, is probably one of the most kind of not known elements that even lives there. So we are going to be getting into Power Query. Now, the Power Query editor in Excel was added to really increase its power. We're going through, people have to write macros. We're doing all of these things to clean our data. It can be a pain when you've got multiple sheets and all of this stuff going on. And it can just be a lot. So Power Query was created to have a space to clean your data, get rid of all the stuff you don't need, add in anything you do need super easily. Now, the reason why I think Power Query is so great is there's a really good, what's called user interface or UI. That just means whatever you want to do, you don't have to write a formula. You can just click a button. Now, there is a formula bar, there is a coding language you can write things in, but most people never need to get into that. It's called the M language. I think it's pretty interesting, but it can be a little bit tricky, which is why it's so great that there's just buttons for everything. So we're going to hop on over now to our candle sales data. So we have 2 years of candle sales here. So I can see I've got order ID, I've got information all across this, all different information on all of this data in here. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this into Power Query to clean this up. So to get into Power Query, we are going to go ahead with our data, and we're going to go over to our Data tab. So in our Data tab, some of you may have never even clicked on over to here. In our Data tab, we have this section over here, this Get and Transform Data section. And we are going to be looking at this Get Data tab specifically. Now, in your Get Data tab, this is where you are able to tell Excel, hey, I want you to look at this data, then take this data into Power Query to bring that in. Literally, get data. Go get your data from somewhere. Well, you could open a blank file and then connect to a lot of different other files, different sources. You can see, you can bring in things from an Excel workbook, a text file, a PDF even. You could work from databases, all these different sources. Well, you can also just work from the data that you have in the file you're already looking at. So we want to pull in data from a table or a range. That's what we're looking at right now. And I can see that option in my From Other Sources here in my Data tab. Now, you can also see these will change kind of periodically based on like whatever you select a lot, but you can also see, you may see that From Table or Range section here. Now, I do want to say, I notice this a lot. I think my like government tenant friends or anyone that may be on like an earlier version, your Get Data button may be closer towards like the middle-ish over here. But you should still have it no matter what version of Excel you're on. It just might be slightly adjusted in that bar based on where you're coming from. So we want to go with that. But before I bring this in, right now this is just a range of data. If I go to my From Table or Range, well then look what it does. It has selected this data, but also look what it did. Let me scroll on up here. It has locked this in place. We've got our kind of absolutes there. We're locked in place. So what happens if this data adjusts? What happens if I get new data pasted in here? Well, I would have to go back in here, change my range because it wouldn't be right. It wouldn't be pulling in it. So what do I need to do? I need to make this a table. That way, any data that gets added to this table later on is going to automatically go through all of the Power Query steps with me. So super easy to make a range of data a table. All you have to do is Control T. So Control key and T, and that is going to make it a table. I'm going to say, yes, my table has headers, and boom. This is now a table. So anytime that you are working with data, especially pulling it in, I'd say probably a good 90% of the time, you want to put that data into a table. It's just going to make it easier to reference, easier to use. I can see I have table 1 right here. So if I want to, I can just change the name from table 1 up in this table design tab right here. And we're just going to change it to candle table. It does have to be one word, just FYI there. But we changed it so that way now anytime I know I want to reference this data, I can say, oh yeah, pull it from the candle table. Makes it so much easier than trying to remember a range on a specific sheet. So now that we've made this a table, I'm going to hop back on over to my Data tab. And over here, we're going to go to Get Data. And again, we're going to go with from that table or range. So if that's not showing up for you right here, then you can just go down to From Other Sources and go with From Table or Range. Also, if yours are moving a little bit slower than mine, you can always pause and hit resume when your stuff loads for you as well. All right, so we now have a new program that has loaded for us. This is called the Power Query Editor. And this can be intimidating for a lot of people when they first start off because it is a fully new item. Now, I already pulled this in, which is why you see it in here twice. Pulled this in. So you can just go click on up to that first one that's in here, that candle table that was in here for y'all when I made your completed file. So when we're on that other one, and you can see that's the first part of our little tour here in Power Query. So when you're in Power Query, it can be intimidating. We've got a lot of buttons. But over here on the left-hand side, this is called your query pane. So over here in your query pane, this would be a list of all of the different data sets you bring in. Because what's cool, you can bring in all of those other different tables. I can bring in lots of different data. So if I want to merge data together, I'm able to do that so easily. So if you have sales data for 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, instead of having to manually copy and paste and move stuff over and then clean things up, you're able to easily come here into Power Query and merge this. We're not going to talk that today, but I do have a video on that topic here on our Excel or on our YouTube channel, a whole series about Power Query. It's a cool thing. If you are also a Power BI fan and have used Power BI, Power Query also exists in Power BI. Power Query in Power BI and in Excel is virtually the same. There's maybe like a few teeny tiny differences, but for the most part, every single thing that you do in Power Query in Excel, you can also do in Power Query in Power BI. And so I did a series last year, I think, where I went through and showed the same steps in both Power Queries and what those outputs would be in Excel, as well as in Power BI. So we've got our query pane over on the left. It has a list of all of the data sets. Now what's cool is whatever one you have selected, that's going to be the preview that is in the middle of your page. Now in this preview section, I'm calling it a preview section because it only shows you essentially the first 1,000 rows of data. So if you're pulling in 200,000 rows of data, well, you're not going to see that. It would run really, really slow if you tried to do that. Power Query works incredibly fast because we're just doing all of our changes to essentially a sample of our data. Then when we close out Power Query, it is going to run through all of the changes we made and apply that to our data. So we can see whatever one we have selected in our query pane on the left, we can see a sample of that data maxing out at that first 1,000 rows. Well, talking about changes that we are able to make, all of the changes that you are able to make are stored in your applied steps. So over in your applied steps, you can see all of the changes that are made. Now, generally, when you pull something in, you are going to see a few changes. And I'm going to hop over to the second one, the one we just connected in, because I want to show you the difference between this and our kind of finished version that I have for you here. With this one, we can see we pulled it in, and for us, Power Query was like, all right, here's our original first step. Here's the source of our data. Well, for us, it looked and it did a second step, which is this change type step. Now, what's really cool with Power Query is you can go through and essentially like going back in time. You can see your data for how it looked in the beginning, and then you can see all of the changes. So I made a bunch of changes. I'm going to walk through talking about what those changes are with y'all in a second. But I can see I can go back to that very first thing, and here's how my data pulled in. I can see the exact, here in my little formula bar up here, I can see it pulled in my candle table. I can see it recognized that I had those headers because we made it a table. But what is right here? I have this little icon that is on the left side of each of my column headers. That is telling you what type of data this is. And you always want to make sure that your data type is accurate because that will influence a lot of things down the line, like what type of filters you might have. So you want to make sure, hey, if it's a number, it's set to a number. If it is text, it's set to text. If it's a date, it's set to a date type. So most times, Power Query will do that for you. So we're kind of moving through our applied steps, really moving through time to see what that did. So it went through and we can now see, hey, instead of that random ABC123 icon where it's like, I don't know what this is, it has specific ones for each table of our data, which is great. Now, one of the most common things that you will probably need to do with your data is remove things that you do not need. So in our data, looking at this, what we have going on, I'm going to skip back a step for this. I can see in my data, I have a first name column and I also have a last name column. Now, with this data, that's great, but I don't really need their first name. I also have a full name column. So I don't need to have their first name, their last name, and their full name. I can fully just get rid of that first name and their last name, and that is good to go. Now, to remove columns, you have a few methods that you can do. You can just right-click in the header of whatever column you need, and you can see I can remove it, I can remove others. You can hold Control and you can multi-select. So I can hold Control, just select the ones I don't want or want to keep and hit remove or remove others. If you have a really wide data set, so if I have, 50 columns, I don't want to have to hold Control and then select, not select. I know I'm going to mess that up. So I always make sure instead of doing it that way, I like to go up to this Choose Column button that is up here in my home ribbon. So I go to this little Choose Column button, and what's handy about this is when you click on that icon, you're going to get a nice little window. I'm going to hit Insert because I'm going to show you this for a sec. Nice little window, and this goes through and it shows you every single column that you have. So again, when you have a ton of columns, this is so handy to be able to go through and just uncheck the ones you don't need and keep any of the ones that you do need. So you can go through, see, click on the ones you want to have, want to keep. It makes your life so much easier. All right, I'm going to cancel out because we already did this step for us, and we can see that in the next one, removed columns, where I knocked out the customer first name and last name. We kept their full name, but see here what I wrote in that line of code that was written for me. I didn't have to do it, just clicked buttons and it wrote this for me. I got rid of the first name column and I got rid of the last name column. We got a full name column. We don't need their, first and last names. Next step is I trimmed text. Now this is something I was working with someone in a mentoring session, and we realized that as their data was getting entered, there was a lot of spaces either before the text or the numbers or even after, and just random amounts, and it was really throwing off kind of combining things and matches later on, because we're like, why? There's two items, they look identical. Why isn't it telling me I'm putting them separate? Well, it was because some had spaces and some didn't. So I see that a lot, and trimming is so easy to do in the Power Query editor. So when you go to trim your text, all you have to do is select the columns that you would want. You can maybe have just one column, multiple columns, how many ever you want to trim, wherever you think there could be spaces. And you just go down to this transform button and trim. So all you need to do is right-click in the header at your transform button, and there is this little trim right here. Notice all of the other transforms that are super easy to apply to that whole column. So if I wanted to make my whole column uppercase or capitalize everything, you have tons of options, super easy with the click of a button. That is why Power Query is so underutilized, but so amazing. So let's start trimming. So I trimmed it. We can see it trimmed. Look at all of that text that was in city and state, all of those spaces. Change that. And then another thing we are able to do is we changed our date type. So there's a few different date types you can have. There's date, time, time zone. Now, I just wanted to have the date. I didn't need to also have the time. I didn't need to have other elements on there. I just wanted to have the date. So I can easily go through here, just click again, changing the type to what we wanted it to be. Now, the last two steps, super easy. I added in 2 additional columns. I pulled the month name and I pulled the year out of that date column. And I'm going to delete this very last step, and I want to do it again with you because I want to show you how easy it can be. So I can see if I look at the code for either of these by clicking over here in my applied steps, I can see up here in my formula bar, all right, that's that whole add column text right here. I can see it's a month name, and I got this date. I got the functions. I could do this, right? It's not the hardest thing I would write, but it's a little bit complicated. Well, let me show you the easiest way ever to make columns. And even when I know the code and the right way to structure it and write it, Most of the time, I'm still using this feature because it just works faster and it's even easier. So I'm going to go over here into my applied step and hit this X, because what's really fun, I'm going to say fun, this kind of can go either way. What's fun here in Power Query is that there is no undo. Control Z does not work here in Power Query. So if you need to get rid of something, you just come over to your applied steps, you see where you hover over the step you want to change. If there is an X, you can fully just remove it. So you just delete it. If you're like, did the wrong thing, I don't need that, I don't want it, you can get rid of it. If you're like, I just want to modify it, you'll see some of these will have gear icons. And so if there's a gear icon, you can click on it. It will pull up a window and you can make the modification there. Or of course, just change that in the formula bar in your code. So what we're going to do is we're going to just remove that last step because I'm going to redo it all together. So I'm going to hit that little X on our inserted year step, and we're going to do it now. So we have an add column ribbon here up at the top. You can switch from home, transform, add column. Now what I'm going to do, we can see we have different column types you can add in. We're going to do what's called a column from example. Now this is an AI feature that has been built into Power Query for a long while, and it is so easy to use. Essentially, all we're going to do is we're going to write in our very first cell of that new column exactly what I want to see. So I want to see the year. I'm just going to look at my date column, see what year is in my date column, and then I'm going to type that year in my new column. I'm going to hit enter, and then Power Query for me is going to understand where in that row I pulled that data from. It's going to be like, oh, that's the year. It's coming from the date column. So it's going to write the line of code for me in the background, and then it's going to iterate over the table going row by row, applying that to it. And the best part, it's like instantaneous. So let's do that now. We're going to go up to our add column ribbon. We're going to click on that icon from that column from examples. You're going to see your whole screen kind of go gray and kind of freeze. And what you're going to do is in that column 1 right here where we have this green bar, we're going to type our year. So down here at the bottom, you can scroll over. If you're on a really wide screen, you might be able to see all of this at once. I can see over here in my date column, my year is 2022. So all I have to do in my new column 1 is write 2022. And then as soon as I hit enter, it is going to magically fill in everything else for me. So go ahead, click into that green cell in that column 1, type in your year. You're going to see some options popping up, and that's okay. You can just go ahead and type what you want. And then I'm going to hit enter. So we've got 2022, and there, boom. It even named the column appropriately for me. It identified, oh, we're doing a transform. We're doing the date year transform, and we are pulling it from the date column. So I can see that line of mQuery code that was written for me in the background. It went row by row by row by row by row, all the way down the whole entire table and went through that date column, pulled out the year, and I can see it changes. I have 2023 data in here too, and filled that out. So now we're good. We can just hit OK. We're going to see this gets added to our table. All of our buttons come back and get ungrayed out, and we're able to kind of move on and use our data. So Power Query can do so much. It is incredibly powerful, that goes to name, and it is something hopefully it's a little bit demystified for you all now. Definitely, if you want to dive more into what Power Query can do, I do have a bunch of videos in here. On our channel, you can scroll through anything here on our YouTube channel that is green. That's Excel. There are a few now other green programs, like Fabric Content is also green, but it's a little bit more teal green. So scroll through anything that's Excel green. You can easily see that Excel content and look through all of the videos we have on this. Now I'm good. I've cleaned it up. I'm happy with this data. What I want to do is I want to take this data here from Power Query and take my updated data into Excel to now use to make a dashboard. I want to, use this data to create other things with this. Before we do this, I'm going to go ahead over my query pane. I'm going to delete that second one we added in. Notice how easy it is to adjust things. So I'm going to delete that candle table too. Hit delete on that one. And once that is gone and we're back to our other one, let's go to our home ribbon. So over here in our home ribbon, the far left kind of place of honor button that we have over here is close and load. And we have two options here. So first one, close and load. This takes the data to Excel. So if I just want this data to take it just like this, drop it into another table, I could do that first one, which would just be the close and load, take it right to Excel. Now, the second one is close and load to. And close and load to gives you some more options. And you're going to use this one if you want to go and do things like pivot tables, anything else like that. It will take your data and move it right into that format for you. Now, if you do your close and load and you want to change it later, you can in your query and connection pane. But I always like to kind of take a second, pause, make sure I'm picking the right option from here to save myself some work. So in that drop down, we're going to go ahead and pick the close and load to, and we are going to, we have our candle sales, and I think mine just went ahead and dropped it in here. Do I have another window? I think I've got another window floating around somewhere in here. All right. While I'm looking for my window to see where in the world my data just disappeared over to, and before we get into looking at designing our dashboard, there is one other thing I want to tell you guys about. Remember, Excel Bootcamp, first thing, make sure you go over that. Second thing I want to make sure you go into and understand is our CertXP, because this is a super awesome thing. So we have, for so long, people have found us for our YouTube videos, and they've gone to our on-demand, full-length classes that we have hundreds and hundreds of hours of training for. And a lot of the time, it is people who are like, hey, I want to get into being a data analyst, or I want to learn this, or I want to learn that. And part of getting jobs in those fields, you know, is having certain Microsoft certifications. So often people get asked, hey, what classes should I take for this certification? What class should I make for this certification? So we've started making classes just specifically to cover that. So instead of saying, hey, you're going to have to learn, 200 questions worth of data, but here's, hours and hours and hours of content that one is super helpful and you should know, but it might not be, specifically tailored for your exam. So we've launched a new feature just focused on helping you all prep for exams. I've passed a bunch of them. All of us here, part of our job is actually taking these exams so we are able to then understand what's in them so we can then teach you all what is in there. So we have a new feature that's now part of our on-demand learning platform that's focused just on certifications, giving you the exact information you need to study and learn and master to do well on these. So if you're a seasoned Learning Pass subscriber already, or you're an on-demand learning subscriber, you are going to have access to this content sooner. I believe it's launching like next week, so super, super soon. But there is, I believe, a whole little video promoing. It has all the information you need, so you can take a look at that now.
The Pragmatic Works team is excited to introduce CertXP. CertXP is not just a learning platform, it's a new horizon in technical exam preparation. Experience learning like never before, with elements of gameplay that make studying not just effective, but incredibly engaging. With our preloaded journeys, you can easily navigate through the vast array of certification options and choose the ones that align with your career goals. CertXP will be in beta to our Season Learning Pass subscribers next week. We hope to give access to all subscribers soon after. Stay ahead of the curve with CertXP's exceptional training programs. Join the waitlist to be notified when CertXP is available.
All right, everyone. The links are in the chat to sign up for CertXP. It is super, super handy to see all of the different classes if you're doing in there. We have a bunch that are coming soon. We have a whole bunch of certs on our list that we're going to be getting you content for to make your life easier. If you need that content, we're here to teach it to you. Alrighty. So we've got our data. It is loaded in, of course, because I already loaded it. So we've got our candle sales. But what I want to do is, if we look at our queries and connections pane, I can see I have it loaded right here. So if you ever are wondering where in the world did something go, or do I want to change it, here in your data tab, you have a queries and connection pane, and that will pull in anything that you've worked on, any of those queries where you're able to change it. So you can see, hey, I have that connection only because I want to do stuff with it. If I want to edit that, I can easily click on that, right click, and then I can change my load to. So if I want to load in the data, or if I want to load it into like a pivot table, change any of that, that is going to be through that queries and connection pane. So I can change if I wanted it to just be a table. If I wanted to show up right here and work on it, then I could click on table. If I want to do a report, I could do that, or a pivot chart, I could do that too. Let's go with pivot table report. We're going to pivot some things up, and we're going to, once we do that, we are going to take it in and make a dashboard. Now, we don't have a ton of time, and I could, trust me, the designer in me could spend hours and hours and hours working on that, which is why I'm going to show you the completed one, and you are able to do that. Oops, I think always pay attention to the last section. I got chatty. So we do not want to do the existing worksheet, right? We don't want to drop it right in here because we've already got other stuff going on. That wouldn't work. So want to make sure you don't rush through this window. Go ahead. We want to click on that new worksheet so we can stick all of our stuff easily over there. So Excel's always a good spot. Take a second, take a little pause. Lots of things to click. Make sure you got the right ones. So we're going to go to a new worksheet with that, and we're going to hit OK. And here we go. All of our data we can see is loaded here in our pivot table fields. We got our fun little pivot set up. Now, with our pivot table, if yours looks a little bit different than mine, that's okay. You can change the look of your pivot table right here in this little gear icon. So if you want to change whether it's on the side, your areas, or on the bottom, some people have a preference for this, you're able to move that around really easily with that gear icon. Now for this one, before we get into anything, I want to bring over our completed file because I want to show you kind of the end goal. Let me grab that end completed file and pull that over. So we're not going to build the entire thing, but I'm going to show you some of the elements on here. So if you want to rebuild this on your own, you are able to. So here's all of our nice handy little candle data. This is all pulling from that cleaned up data. And we can see we have a logo pulled in. We can have some slicers working off of that data. We can have these look like cards, but this data is actually just pulling into a cell. We can pull in, different elements. You can see the data that's pulling over for each of those things. And that's just grabbing elements from our pivot table to have this final easy to view output. That is really when we're thinking about dashboard design, we need to be thinking about how can we make it easy for our end user, sometimes yes, that end user is ourselves, to understand and see the data we need at a glance. We need to make it really clear and easy to do that. I actually have a series on here about report design in Power BI, but the concepts are the same. The structuring of your report really should be the same. The way people's eyes move through content, that works the same whether you're building a report in Excel, Power BI, Tableau, anywhere else you may be doing your report building. Those kind of dashboard design elements stay in play. So we've got a bunch of different elements on here, and let's go through and we're going to do a few of these. Again, you're able to click on any of these and kind of see that end output, but we're going to do a few together. I saw a fantastic question in the chat, which was, why do you not just use Power BI? Well, That is a question I ask all the time too, because I do love Power BI. I love working in it. But a lot of people do not have Power BI. A lot of people have never used Power BI. They don't have access to it. No one else in their company uses it. So if they were building a report, it would really just be for themselves. So many people get feedback, hey, like, I like to use Power BI. It seems cool, but everyone in my organization is on Excel. I have to show this in Excel. So I always like to say, hey, there's a lot you can do. Yes, Power BI was built for visualizations. It's an offshoot from Excel to work and create visualizations to make that process easier. Because sometimes when you're building things in Excel, you got to jump through a few hoops. It may not be the most intuitive, but you can still get really great things done if you do indeed want to or need to build and create in Excel. So let's go through a few different options, some things in the way that I build it on here, so you can get some good little dashboard design ideas. Now, first off, for our pivot table, any data that you want to have connected, that, hey, if I'm clicking on the decorative slicer, I want my last year sales to only show me the decorative candle categories. If I'm clicking on 2022 in my slicer, I want to make sure that I have just, the proper things showing here and there. So if you want to do that, you have to make sure that whatever data you want to show is showing up in the pivot table, and then we can build charts off of the pivot table and slicers and the like. So for my pivot table, we can go through and we can add in the elements that we want to for this. So I'm going to add in things like I want to see, let's do my total sales can go into values, like the unit price could go into values. I want to see product names. I want to see, what else can we look at? We can see the month name, so I can see when certain things were sold. And don't worry, we can readjust all of this. My goal is not really to make a super beautiful pivot table here. I have a video on that if you want to see that. My goal is essentially really get our content in here so I have the elements in place that I need. So if I want to, we can readjust and move our month name. Or if I want to, into my columns, let's say I'm going to put my year over into my columns. I don't want my sum of my year. I want my year on my column. So you can easily move around all of your elements in there. But now I can see, hey, based on the year, here I can find the different elements. So I can scroll down and I've got, grand totals in all of these elements. And I can pull this amount and then use that in the card. And so that's how I got all the values. I didn't have to write anything. I just had my pivot table create all of these things for me and get me the data that I needed. So we've got our total sales by the different products, by the different months. And we can utilize all of these elements now into our final view. Now, before I ever design a dashboard, before I ever start putting visuals onto the page, I will always make a wireframe. This could be from my background in web design, starting there. You always want to think through, what am I going to build? Draw it out. And now you don't necessarily have to do it in Excel, but we're in Excel in dashboard. It makes sense to do it here, right? But you can grab a sticky note and draw in there. You can draw it on your whiteboard and literally whiteboard out some ideas. Just a simple piece of paper. A lot of times I'll also use a PowerPoint slide and just put little blocks where I need things to be. But kind of once you've thought out where it is, then it's super easy to go through on your actual Excel page and mark out the sections. And all I did for this was select the sections that I wanted to be something, and then I added a border to them. So I can put in all of these borders. I normally do that thick outside border one when I'm doing this. And that way you can see, hey, let's put some slicers, let's line things up, make sure things are even and organized. So that way, when we are doing our final version, you got some of that blank page paralysis taken away, where you're like, all right, I know I have this skeleton of where I'm going to place elements. I know things are going to fit. I know exactly what I need to then go and get data-wise or design-wise or element-wise for this. So then super easy. All you have to do is duplicate that wireframe. So move or copy, and then we are going to create a copy, move it to the end. And then this is going to be our dashboard. So here on this dashboard one, we are able to go through and do all of the changes that we need to. So first off, before we do anything, I think back to front. So I'm thinking what is going to be in the very, very back, in the background, then moving forward into layers. Like, am I going to have different colors in different sections? Am I going to use a rectangle, like just put in your insert tab? Your insert tab is going to be your really good friend as you're doing your dashboard design. So here in my insert tab, am I going to use a shape like a square, a rectangle for my background? Or am I just going to change my cell colors? Am I going to actually be using my cells to create things? And if I'm using my cells to create things, well, then I'm going to need to be able to have access to that back layer to actually touch the cells. So generally, if I'm going to do a background, I'm just changing the cell color for that. There are some spaces where I'll do a shape. So if you look at the completed version over here, I have added a shape behind these elements to really help that stand out. Now, when you're doing dashboard design, you want to think left to right, top to bottom. So most of the time, you want to put your kind of navigation elements, your slicers, things like that, either on the left side or along the top, or kind of both. That's going to be where people are looking. You don't want to put a slicer at the bottom right corner. No one's looking over to the bottom right for their slicer. They want to see, where can I do that and have it nice and organized? So if you think, hey, when am I navigating around on things like a website and something makes sense? Well, your navigation is generally at the top there. So it's really easy to find things. That logo is normally going to be in that top left corner. So mimicking the behavior that people are already expecting, that they're already trained to understand and use, it's going to just make it easier for people to understand and use your dashboard. So for this one, if I'm going to change the color of everything, then you can click that little tiny triangle right in that top corner to select all of your cells. And then I am going to change my background color for this. I'm also going to get rid of my grid lines. Now, when I'm building, I'll keep my grid lines on, but then I'll normally turn them off after I'm kind of through my grid process. So that way I know everything's aligned, especially if I already have drawn out all the lines myself. I don't need my grid lines on too. So with all of that selected, I'm just going to go over to home, and then I'm going to just use my little paint bucket to fill in all of these cells. So color theory wise, this would really be going off of, hey, what colors make sense for your organization, for your specific dashboard that you're doing. And you also want to think about legibility and accessibility. One of our other trainers here, Greg, has done an amazing series that he's still working through, so you get lots more episodes of, and he's going through accessibility in universal design. And so there's so many good principles in understanding, making sure your color contrast is good. Because what point is there to build something if some people can't use it, right? If you're doing this and you want people to understand your information, you want to make sure it's displayed in a way that they can get that. So I like to have a dark background for kind of the very back of the report. I'm going to go with this dark shade, and then I'm going to go with some lighter elements. So I'm also going to then make kind of a dashboard-ish rectangle shape. And of course, this really does depend a bit on your screen size, but I'm going to kind of contain everything in about like this and make this just like a little bit lighter. So that way I have a bit of kind of contrast between the two, and it doesn't look like it's, going on forever. Next up with this one, one of the elements that I did is I pulled over the cards for this, but I did a little cheater method for making the cards because I wanted just my text to be right here. So to make one of these cards, all I did for this, I did a merge and center for all of these cells. Then it's going to give me a little alert that it's going to only take that, one element. Yep, that's okay. And then for this, I was then able to change my cell formatting for this to add a gradient and a border to the cells. So with that is saved in that finished file as well, but you can see you have a cell style tab, and I have this custom one right here. With custom ones, all you have to do is go to new cell style and you can easily modify it. You can also modify any custom ones by just going to this modify button, and you can go in and adjust the formatting of anything. But in there, that allowed me to add a gradient to a cell background. And then all I had to do to get the element I need in here, super easy. What did we start with? The very, very first thing that we were looking for, an equal sign. So we are going to say, hey, in this one, I want to go find last year's sales. That's the card, the value I want showing right here. So to go get last year's sales, I'm going to do my equal sign. I'm going to hop over to the candle table. And that's my pivot table right here. So I want to see last year's sales. So here is my sum of total sales for 2022. So for 2022, here is my total sales for 2022. So skipping over it right here, this 3,200 amount. So I'm going to click on this cell, and you can see right here it says get pivot data. So it's pulling it from here, the sum of total sales, and it's pulling from, we can see that locked down A1 column year 2022. So I'm going to hit enter. Now this is really important. If you're going to another location, like another sheet to get your data, you don't want to click back to the original one before you hit enter or things are going to break. So I'm going to hit enter, and that is going to pull that over. And now I have my value. And to have kind of that heading, that title, all I had to do at the top was do a text box. So in your insert, all you are doing is going to my text. Here's my text. And then you're going to grab a text box, and you can, I normally will start it outside so I get the box, and then I'll resize it so it fits inside of the location I'm going. And then here, what do I want this is? Last year's sales. So you can easily write what you want and put this in. And this was the same process I did for all 4 of those. And you can see that in the completed file. And of course, you can bump up your text sizes to get it to fit exactly the way and look you want it to be. Logo, that's pulled in as an image. Again, go to that insert ribbon, grab a picture, and that's going to let you navigate. I always do place over cells rather than in cells. That way it's not really tied to your grid size. So place over cells, stick a logo image, put that company logo in there, and that's going to fit that in. Last thing I'm going to show you is slicers. So charts, slicers, all of these are coming, again, from that candle table. So in your kind of with your pivot table, making sure you have this up and this selected, right here in your insert ribbon, what do we have? We've got a little slicer right here. So we need to make sure we have the data in here that we want to be accessible for our slicers. And then here on this same page with my pivot table, I'm going to click on slicers. It's going to show me all of the data I have access to that I might need, and I can just pick. So let's see, one of those is the year, and I'm going to hit OK, and it's going to give me a year slicer. Now all I have to do to use it is do a Control-C to copy, go to the final dashboard, Control-V, and then just move it over to exactly where I want it to be. And that's the same process, boom, that you get to follow for those other slicers And that is how you fill out your report. So dashboard design, it can seem intimidating at first when you have a lot of elements and you're like, how do I go through every single one? It can seem tedious. Breaking it down into a process for like all the same things. Start back to front. Get that background in, move up, do individual cell coloring options if you need to, and then just place those elements in. Pull from that pivot table, pull from that cleaned up data, and make sure that you have that set up. Little tip, maps currently don't. It's really a pain. So if you have any map data, you will need to kind of copy out anything that you need, paste that into a map. Of course, makes it not really accessible to slicers, but you can get some good aspects from doing that as well. So you'll be able to use that completed file if you want to rebuild this. Of course, if you do have more questions related to dashboard design, I could talk about this all the time. So join me in the bootcamp, but also join me next week when we go through and do a recap of questions, because you guys have been so active in the chat, which is fantastic, and have a ton of time to look through all of those. So I will be going through, checking out all of these specific questions in there and pulling a bunch of them that we can cover and go over in this kind of recap session for Excel. But what I hope for all of you is that you're just feeling more confident in your Excel journey, having gotten a few tips, whether it's new shortcuts you didn't know, or just being more confident in your formula writing or Power Query usage. So drop in the chat what you've learned, and hopefully we'll see you for that question section. And then also, we do Learn with the Nerds pretty much every single month. And so I know we've got a promo for the next one, so you can see exactly what that one is going to be. And we will see you then.